What's going on, guys? This is Rob. We are back with DC's Dark Crisis and another episode of Infinite Frontier, which is a really cool. Is it really an episode? Do we really call it an episode? In any event, this video is sponsored by Display, so let's talk about them real quick and then we'll jump back into the video. Okay, so the folks over at Display sent me 5 plates, and you see 4 here. Don't worry, I know how to count. The 5th one is actually over here. It's the Joker one that I already have set up, and I'll show you guys how to install these here in a second. This is my whole gym setup, by the way. Beast mode. So here's the thing. They sent me 5 of these, right? So there's the Joker, of course. There's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Superman, and the Green Lantern. So the deal behind this is you get 25% off of 1, and then you get 29% off of 3 or more. But they also wanted me to show you guys how to install these things. So they install by way of magnets, but they have these little leaves right here. These little protective leaf things right here. So give me 1 second, and I'll show you how this thing attaches. Okay, so this leaf right here, right? This thing, like literally, it has this little white cover on the back of it, right? But you just peel that off, it's pretty simple. And then you essentially press this against the wall the way you would if you were normally sticking something to it, right? Minimizing bubbles, little things like that. You'd probably take more time installing yours than I'm doing here, but it comes out pretty solid. The thing that I'm contending with here is I've got a textured wall, as you can see. So you won't really see it as flat as it would be against a non-textured wall, but still. Okay, so now we got these magnets up. On the back of the magnets, let me show you another set of magnets. So on the back of these magnets, you have these little blue things right here. Literally, that just peels off. And then you simply just press it up against, you know, this little square where it says like place magnet here. I mean, it does tell you right there, right, to like, you know, press hard, you know, for at least 5 seconds. Honestly, I had to press a little longer than that because it's a textured wall and kind of had to push it around a bit, but it serves its purpose. And then you basically just grab your poster or your metal poster, metal display, and then just attach it, right? And it literally just adheres right there. Or it doesn't really adhere, just magnetizes it to the wall, which is cool. I need to fill this out a little bit more. But yeah, that's how this whole thing works. So make sure you guys check the link in the description to get your Display. Remember, it's 25% off of 1 and then 29% off of 2. But yeah, let's get back into our video. And so what this does, of course, picking up after the last video that we did, we basically end up joining Captain Carrot. Oh my God, I love Captain Carrot. People always ask, like, why do I love Captain Carrot so much? Because he's a super bunny. So having said that, there's a bit of a conversation that happens here between Captain Carrot and Machine Head. Now, one of the things about Machine Head is we're not really given any indication of who this guy is. And in fact, even though Captain Carrot walks in on him with his helmet off, we never actually see his face. Instead, his helmet is put back on and the two of them kind of continue this sort of general conversation, but there's not a whole lot doing here, right? And in fact, I'm not 100% sure why this conversation happens in the first place. But one of the big things that Machine Head talks about is this idea of the events that led to Thomas Wayne being brought to them. And it's just kind of some theories, some speculations. We never actually find out what they are. Instead, what we end up doing is shifting over to Thomas Wayne and Calvin Ellis as they are in the White House. Remember, Calvin Ellis is the president of his world, and he's also Superman at the same time. So he kind of balances these two lives amongst each other, doing the best he can, right? While he had taken off to do his thing, he was gone for like 24 hours. They'd kept the country running, but the reality is, as president, he kind of has to be there, right? If the president just disappears for 24 hours, panic is going to set in, because most every major decision in relation to like being commander-in-chief, different things like that, bills that need to be vetoed or approved have to go through the president. A person can't just take his place unless he signs, like, literally, was it the 25th Amendment or whatever it was? The one that determines that he's unfit to be president of the United States. But that's not something you just randomly do. You don't sign the line of succession because you're going to be going on a break. Right? Not really the way things work here. So trying to kind of maintain this balance is really intriguing. Now, of course, what's funny is that Thomas Wayne picks up on this idea that Calvin never really talks about his family too much. He never really has a discussion about them. And in fact, one of the things that he's also done is he's basically turned the Oval Office into a kind of fortress of solitude away from the fortress, kind of like a little mini fortress for himself, but allows him to basically operate as both Superman and president at the same time. Now, one of the things he does talk about is the Lex Luthor that's native to his universe about how Lex Luthor's always kind of proved himself to be this just, extremely dangerous enemy. Now, if anything, this is probably Williamson and them establishing for us that there are individuals who exist across the multiverse that are basically multiversal constants, that they are for the most part usually exceedingly intelligent and dangerous, even if they're not always bad guys. Lex Luthor, more often than not, is a villain who is dangerous. However, someone like Alexander Luthor from Earth 3 is actually a good guy, but that's only because of the nature of that universe, that people who are traditionally superheroes are actually villains, and people who are traditionally villains are actually superheroes. So it's just the backwards nature of that reality. But barring that particular universe itself, in most all universes, Lex Luthor's a bad guy, and he's incredibly dangerous. And that's one of the things that Calvin hits on, is because in this reality, one of the things that Lex Luthor had always tried to do was achieve a means of transdimensional travel, right? To leave his reality and travel to other realities in the multiverse. He never finished it, but it was something he was working on. The fact that the ship that he had touched had resonated with the vibrational frequency of this universe points to the idea that Lex Luthor, even if he wasn't necessarily the person responsible for it, had some kind of a hand in developing it. And so that's when they end up transitioning to Lex Luthor's base of operations, ultimately breaking in. And then once they get to where Lex Luthor's at, they find he's actually dead. Somebody's punched a hole in his chest. And that's what's so crazy, is because what it looks like is Lex Luthor, or they had presumably helped Lex Luthor achieve this and then left, right? They took the technology and bailed out, killing Lex Luthor in the process. We don't definitively know that's the case, but that's what it looks like. But again, it's a mystery that leads to yet another mystery. If Lex Luthor was killed in an effort to essentially use his ability to travel across universes, then why? And who was it that did it? I mean, obviously it's for transitioning across universes, but what's the greater goal here? What's the greater scheme? Now, once we get to the conclusion of this, all of this will make sense, because there is one gigantic guiding hand behind all of this. And it's amazing when you get to the reveal, because there's who you've heard it is, then there's who it actually is. But beyond that, we end up switching back, of course, to Earth Zero and to Cameron Chase. Now, the big question that a lot of you guys asked is, how did Cameron Chase survive the death or the explosion of Captain Atom? This is really Williamson and them kind of pulling a MacGuffin, right? Like, Extract leapt in, saved her, and teleported her away. I'm not really sure why that was necessary. Maybe it was to provide just some kind of shock value for the comic or something like that. The fact that Extract saved Cameron Chase, in and of itself, that's not really important. It doesn't really matter. It's just kind of like, okay, I mean, I guess, cool, whatever. But I'm kind of curious to see what the bigger picture is in terms of like this grand scheme. The thing about this, though, is what they end up doing is, of course, speaking with Alan Scott and Obsidian, and where they start asking questions like, what's going on here? Why is all this happening? Where have you taken Jade? All that kind of stuff. The only response they're given is from Extract, who says like she's lost, right? Kind of. That she resisted us and basically paid the price. So presumably they left her for dead out there. Now, of course, we know she's not dead. She's very much alive. But as far as Alan Scott and them go, they don't really know what's going on. The bigger thing behind this, though, is that when it comes to Bones and all those guys, Hector Hammond and all them, they are kind of working as a joint unit, and they're all supposed to be meeting at a particular location. That really Hammond's ship should be arriving there. But one of the funny things about this is that Cameron Chase does not have all the pieces of this puzzle, and that's when she starts asking questions like, okay, you need to tell me what's going on here, right? Like, you need to tell me what in the world is happening. Like, Roy Harper's supposedly dead, but you're telling me that they came into contact with Roy Harper, that Hammond has Roy Harper in his possession the last we heard from him. Like, what's going on here, right? Like, you're telling me all these people who had basically died are coming back. You're telling me now we've got some big charter that deals with the multiverse. And what Bones does is offer a bit of an explanation, but even the explanation he gives is still cloak and dagger, right? He says our world is constantly under attack. Oftentimes it's from people who are from here, from this universe, right? The Joker attacks Gotham City and floods the place with toxin or something along those lines, right? He says, but the most dangerous individuals who have attacked our world have actually been from outside, right? And this is one of the cool things, because one of the things to remember here, because of the events of really Doomsday Clock, the actions of Dr. Manhattan, that what we got was a restoration of the entire multiverse with all these crises, right? The way that it originally played out is you had Crisis on Infinite Earths, right? That reset the multiverse, wiped out everything before it, and almost nobody remembered anything about how the multiverse had been, or that it had even existed before the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, right? Post-Crisis, you got New Earth, a singular universe where everybody got new origins and all that kind of stuff. That runs all the way up to 0 Hour, where you basically have Hal Jordan, when he becomes Parallax, messing with a time stream, momentarily blinking it out of existence, bringing him back, but it was an opportunity DC used to rework people's origins yet again. Then you go into Infinite Crisis, right? That brings the multiverse back. You go into Final Crisis, that makes the heroes aware of the multiverse. Then you go into New 52, that result of Flashpoint. But the big difference is that with the New 52 and the Flashpoint event, what we ended up learning during Doomsday Clock is Dr. Manhattan had basically prevented Alan Scott from ever becoming the Green Lantern, and in doing so, the JSA never formed. That, among a few other things, led to like huge gaps in people's memories being removed. The whole purpose behind Doomsday Clock was to basically say, the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, that Zero Hour, that Infinite Crisis, Final Crisis, Flashpoint, they all happen, and they're all part of one large, great big, huge continuity. Everybody remembers everything now. And so when you see these characters being depicted here, the Anti-Monitor the way he originally appeared, Perpetua, Dr. Manhattan, Hal Jordan as Parallax, all these characters, they are all part of a continuous singular timeline, right? And that's why he remembers all of this, is because all their memories were restored of all the Crisis events that have ever happened, as opposed to people only remembering, little bits and pieces of the history of everything that had ever happened in the universe itself. But it's why you see him referencing heroes that you would assume he wouldn't know anything about, right? He wouldn't know anything about the original Anti-Monitor. He wouldn't know anything about like Hal Jordan as Parallax or something like that. Maybe like Mr. Mind during Final Crisis. He wouldn't really know about all that stuff, but now he does. At the end of the day, he says we can't take another time-space event and the heroes are doing nothing to cut it off at the pass. He says, so I bit the bullet and I made a deal. We'll be safe. And the response of Cameron Chase is, safe from what? And he says, you saw what Captain Atom did, right? You saw what could happen if someone from an alternate universe comes here and attacks our world. They would blend in with the superheroes. And by the time the superheroes realized something was wrong, it would be too late. And so at that point, she asked the question, did you know that Captain Atom was not from our world? Did you know that? And you sent me there anyway. And his response is, I simply needed you to understand. I needed you to confront that Captain Atom. I needed you to know he wasn't from our world. I needed him to detonate, possibly kill you in the process, and Extract was always going to save you. But in the end, he's like, we have to get out of here. We have a lot of work to do. You do not want to be on this ship when it takes off. And Cameron Chase shoots him in the leg and says, we're going. Like, we are all going to this location. And that's when he says, you don't understand. The place that we're going to, it's a place of endings. You've doomed all of us, Cameron Chase. Like, we're all going to die. And so at that point, of course, that's when we start to realize it's basically going to Earth Omega. And that's the significance of this, is that Earth Omega basically appears to be a place where everything ends, right? Where everything goes to die. And so what we end up doing is jumping back to Roy Harper alongside Jade and Atom Smasher and all those guys, Power Girl and whatnot. And a fight breaks out between the two of them, but it's more of a misunderstanding. That when they see Roy Harper as basically a Black Lantern, because of the fact that they've been through the multiverse and there's all kinds of universes out there, they presume that Hector Hammond has basically gotten his hands on a Black Lantern, and a Black Lantern has joined the cause of Hector Hammond, when that's not the case. Instead, it's basically him just being possessed by a lantern ring, and of course he crawls out to Jade for help. Now Jade of course responds and is able to basically talk him down and realize it is Roy Harper who somehow returned from the dead. And so that's when they're kind of asking the question, okay, what do we do here, right? What do we do with all of this stuff? And so that's when you end up finding out that what had gone on is that in the initial conflict, when you had Jade who had gone missing in the JSA building, that basically Extract had shown up there to attack all of them. And when the whole great big huge conflict had popped off, that a shot was made against Jade, which had hit her ring, and when that had happened, it had teleported her away, along with what seemed to be the rest of the JSA. Hence why you have Power Girl here and so on and so forth. And they've basically been traveling around trying to defeat these guys where and whenever they can. So that's what led them to this particular conflict here. The bigger issue though is that because of the fact that they overhear a broadcast where Hector Hammond is supposed to be meeting with Bones and Cameron Chase and Extract and all of them at a particular location, they say, well, if they're expecting Hector Hammond, we can't disappoint. Otherwise, they'll know there's something going on with their plan. So they ultimately teleport to that location as well, only for us to find out it is indeed Earth Omega. The kicker is that when they get here, they end up finding out that some of the occupants here are the shadow demons of the Anti-Monitor, right? From like the original Crisis on Infinite Earths event. And so again, you kind of get this back and forth bit of a thing here where you've got Barry Allen, who's just running super fast on this device, and he's being manipulated by Psycho Pirate. You got Jade and you got the JSA who were like, we can't do this on our own, right? If those are just the shadow demons of Anti-Monitor and that's just them, that's more than we can handle just based on sheer number alone, let alone the power they possess. So like, we need to call in like the Justice League, the rest of the JSA, the Titans, the whole 9 yards, and they ultimately decide that it's in their best interest to leave. But at that point, Roy Harper freaks out and says, no, like, what if my daughter's down there, right? So like literally, because everything's popping off there, their ship ends up crashing into the ship of Hector Hammond along with Cameron Chase and everybody. You just got this giant mayday that's going on, right? Even blasting into the House of Heroes, that there's some kind of a calamity that's going on. And so you have all the alarms that are basically silenced by Harbinger. When you have Thomas Wayne and you have Superman, right, Calvin Ellis, who show back up here, that their question is, okay, like we have to figure like what in the world is going on? Like who was it that stole the ship of Lex Luthor, or his technology, perfected it or whatever? Something's happening with all these forces basically coming together, really villainous forces, uniting together across the multiverse. What's happening here, right? Who's bringing these guys together? What's taking place? Literally, their enemies are marshaling against them, and they're basically fumbling around in the dark. You have Machine Head, who makes this statement and says, okay, has anybody seen or heard anything from the Flash Barry Allen, right? Does anybody know where Barry Allen is? We sent him into the multiverse. He's supposed to be finding the source of all of this stuff, or at least something that we can use to figure out what's going on here. And the response of Machine Head is like, he's nowhere to be seen, right? He says, but I nearly have the shuttle rebuilt. With the specs that you sent over from Lex Luthor's lab, I'll be finished in no time. We should have a good idea of what he was up to. And he says, use it to find out where it was from and where it was going. Now, one of the other kind of funny bits of discussion here is that you have Calvin Ellis talking to Batman, or talking to Thomas, and saying, this all started with you. Why? And where Thomas is like, I don't know, man, I'm a nobody. The response of Calvin is, no, you're a remnant of a broken reality, right? But more than that, you are the father of a great hero. You know, maybe we've been looking at all the wrong places and should look more at you, right? Maybe you're the source of this in some capacity. And so what you end up having is basically a kind of observation screen that Thomas Wayne approaches and simply says, like, look up Batman, right? Like, show me Batman. And he ends up seeing all these different versions of Bruce from across the multiverse, right? Batman Beyond, you get Batman from like the Red Sun universe, just all these different versions of Bruce. And that's when he comes to the realization that in every single universe, Bruce Wayne is always Batman in some capacity. It's his destiny. It's always who he's supposed to become. And that's when Thomas comes to the realization that during Tom King's run, trying to talk Batman or trying to talk Bruce out of being Batman was the wrong decision. That's not what he was supposed to do. That instead, he was supposed to help his son become a better Batman, right? That's just the nature of Bruce, is to always become Batman. Beyond that, what you have is Calvin Ellis, who starts talking to Harbinger, right? The sentient computer here, and says, like, show me any and all signs of multiversal travel since the multiverse was restored. At the very least, it'll show us everybody who's moving across the multiverse. But he's denied that. And when the question is why, like, it's one, that's not supposed to happen. That any and all information available to the multiverse should be accessible by Calvin Ellis, even if nobody else, because he's effectively the leader of Justice Incarnate, of the multiversal superhero team, right? The Multiversal Justice League. And that's when he's told you're not allowed access to that information. And so what ends up happening is he and Kellex basically hack Harbinger, and when they do, they basically access a message that is coming from Barry Allen, where he says, like, he's like, this is Barry Allen, the Flash from Earth Zero, reporting in. And he says, Justice Incarnate, call an emergency meeting now, right? Connect with the Justice League. Tell them that death follows us yet again. And that's when it's one of those things where he's told that Barry Allen had basically traveled to Earth Omega. And the response of Calvin Ellis is, if Barry's gone to Earth Omega, we have to go as well. We have to call Earth Zero's Justice League. We have to unite the superheroes, and we have to go to Earth Omega, because whatever it is that's there is of such significance and such a significant, incredible threat that it challenges the existence of everything. It really is like, this is a do or die, right? This is an all hell kind of a situation, right? Like, this will basically bring the end of everything that we hold dear. And so before they're able to mobilize or even get on the move at all, they're all attacked by Machine Head. And so as soon as that takes place, Machine Head literally locks them all away, like just shuts a door, puts them in what's basically a kind of prison. And then when the question by Captain Carrot is asked, when he asks, like, why are you doing this? The response of Machine Head is, years ago, my world, Earth 8, was invaded by an alternate reality. We tried to fight the war in secret, but ultimately we lost, and I lost. For years, I questioned how. And all the signs pointed to one place, Earth Zero. And he says, now I don't want to destroy the multiverse, I just want to keep us separate. No more crossovers between worlds. But ironically, I was not alone. There are a lot of people in the multiverse who feel the exact same way. And so we came together knowing there must be sacrifice to correct a great injustice. And so that's when you end up getting the reformation of the Injustice Society. And this is the multiversal version of the team. So you've got Superwoman from Earth 3, you've got Yellow Lantern Joker, which is amazing, Magog, just some pretty heavy hitters. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.